Have you ever had this experience? Feeling nervous in front of someone you're meeting for the first time, or worrying all day long about someone's expression? When we meet people, we naturally look at this first. That is the person's first impression. How important first impressions are, and how much they determine. Let's explore together today, in depth. If you enjoy today's content, please subscribe and like. I'll repay you with great content for your wise living. Now, the first reason why you should look at this when meeting someone is that first impressions are decided in just zero point 0.1 seconds. Imagine this: a person passing by on the street. The moment you enter an interview room, the instant your eyes meet, on a blind date. In all these situations, our brain almost unconsciously makes judgments about the other person in just zero point 0.1 seconds. Perhaps before I consciously judge, the other person has already formed a first impression of me. This happens as fast as a computer running a program in an area difficult for us to control. Why is it decided in such a short time? Because humanity has evolved the ability to quickly judge others for survival over a long period. We instinctively scan whether this person is a threat or someone who can help us. This evolutionary mechanism still deeply influences our behavior in modern society. For example, when we meet someone new in an unfamiliar environment, we unconsciously grasp the other person's expression, gaze, posture, and even the atmosphere they create in an instant to make a provisional evaluation. This judgment is closer to an instinctive sense, engraved in our bodies over many years, rather than going through a rational thought process. And the bigger problem is that the first impression formed in this brief moment doesn't change easily. In psychology, this is called the primacy effect. It's the theory that information obtained first has much greater influence than information obtained later. If you gave a positive impression in the first meeting, even if you make small mistakes later, the other person is likely to understand generously, saying, "That can happen." For example, if you gave a first impression of being a kind and considerate person, even if that person acts a bit blunt one day, people will think something bad must have happened and try to understand. This is because the initial good impression acts as a positive filter, softening the somewhat negative information that follows. Conversely, if you gave a negative first impression, no matter how hard you try, it's extremely difficult to change that impression. Even if you show good behavior later, there's a tendency to view it through a negative frame, thinking, "I was right about that feeling." It's like trying to glue back together pieces of a broken mirror. No matter how precisely you attach them, it's hard to make it as perfectly smooth as the beginning. The ripple effect of a negative first impression is far more extensive than we think. Once formed, a negative image doesn't easily disappear from the other person's memory and tends to make them interpret even your other positive aspects negatively. For example, if you gave a somewhat arrogant or insincere impression at first meeting, no matter how humbly and sincerely you behave later, the other person might misunderstand your actions as fake or having ulterior motives. Breaking such prejudice requires tremendous time and effort, and sometimes even that effort can be in vain. That's why when we meet someone for the first time, we need to recognize the importance of that moment and consciously try to make a good impression. Seizing that 0.1 second that will never come again is the way to button up the first button of a relationship correctly. Recognizing the importance of this first meeting and actively trying to form a good impression is not just a technical matter, but also an expression of respect and consideration for the other person. The second reason why you should look at this when meeting someone is that first impressions affect all your relationships. As we live We form relationships with countless people. These relationships are very diverse, from personal friendships to professional cooperation, meetings with interviewers, first encounters with new colleagues, negotiations with business partners, dates with blind date partners, even short conversations with shop owners you meet by chance. At the beginning of all these relationships, first impressions exist, and this first impression plays a decisive role in determining which direction your relationship will flow, and even the success or failure of the relationship. Let me give you an example. An applicant who gave a good first impression in an interview plants a positive image in the interviewer's mind. A neat appearance, confident attitude, and bright smile make the interviewer think, this person seems reliable and would fit well in our company. This positive first impression works in the applicant's favor throughout the interview process and tends to make the interviewer evaluate the applicant's answers more positively, even if there are some shortcomings. If the first impression is good, they're more likely to be seen as talented with potential. Conversely, an applicant who gave a bad first impression may not even get the chance to properly show their abilities, no matter how excellent they are. This is because a negative filter has already been placed in the interviewer's mind. The interviewer may try to find faults in the applicant's answers, or even look at positive answers with suspicious eyes. The same is true in business meetings. If you give an impression that makes the other person trust you in the first meeting, the possibility of closing a deal increases significantly. It's important to instill the conviction that I can trust and do business with this person. This doesn't just mean appearance. Various elements work together to form a first impression. The attitude of listening to the other person, a clear and distinct voice, appropriate eye contact, and more. For example, neatly arranged attire, a posture of seriously listening while looking into the other person's eyes and expressing one's opinion in a clear yet gentle tone can simultaneously convey professionalism and trustworthiness to the other person. Such a positive first impression allows you to occupy an advantageous position at the negotiation table and becomes an important foundation for building long-term business relationships. It's even more important in romantic relationships. What if you went on a blind date and the other person was sitting with messy clothes and an expressionless face? Probably the door of your heart would close even before starting a conversation. It's hard to feel curiosity or attraction to the other person, and the conversation itself is likely to be cut off. But if they approach with a neat appearance and bright expression and confidence, you'll feel favorable and want to learn more. Not only the other person's appearance, but every word spoken, every small gesture, plants a positive or negative impression on the other person, determining the direction of the relationship. A first impression is like a signal flare announcing the beginning of that relationship. Only when this signal flare is positive can a foundation be laid for the relationship to develop smoothly. A negative signal flare can prevent the relationship from even budding. We might think, I'm a decent person. They'll realize it later. But the problem is that many people don't wait until that later. We must remember the fact that first impressions can determine both the beginning and end of a relationship. Thus, a first impression is not just about external appearance, but a powerful element that has enormous influence on the quality and depth of all human relationships we form. The third reason why you should look at this when meeting someone is that first impressions make your message much more powerful, no matter how good the content of a speech is. If the speaker approaches with an unconfident attitude and disheveled appearance, the power of that message is inevitably halved. The audience becomes focused on the speaker's unstable appearance and is more influenced by the speaker's negative image than the content of the message. In the end, the core content the speaker wants to convey is not properly delivered, and the effect of the speech will greatly diminish. Conversely, even if the content is somewhat ordinary, if the speaker talks with a confident posture and sincere gaze, that message can give much greater resonance to the audience. The speaker's confident attitude and favorable first impression gain the audience's trust and increase concentration on the message. This is exactly why first impressions go beyond mere external appearance and act as a powerful tool to increase the credibility and persuasiveness of the message you want to convey. Think about it. Suppose two salespeople are selling the same product. One approaches with neat and clean attire and a bright smile, explaining the product with a clear voice. They explain the product's advantages while looking into the customer's eyes and sincerely answer the customer's questions. The other introduces the product with wrinkled clothes and a somewhat insincere attitude, mumbling the explanation. They avoid the customer's gaze and answer questions as if reluctantly. Even if both deliver the same information about the same product, whose explanation will the customer trust more and be more likely to buy the product from? Of course, the salesperson with the good first impression. First impressions are like a vessel containing a message. The more beautiful and solid the vessel, the more valuable the contents feel. Your appearance, expression, attitude, voice, and even body language, all these elements combine to create your first impression. And this first impression makes your message stand out more. Your first impression adds power to your words, gives persuasiveness to your arguments, and puts sincerity into your story. Especially, a sincere smile is an important element that maximizes the power of the message. Not just a smile with raised corners of the mouth, but a Duchenne smile with wrinkles around the eyes simultaneously conveys friendliness and trust to the other person. It gives the feeling that this person is sincere with me. Such a smile adds weight to every word you say and opens the other person's heart. Also, appropriate eye contact is important. Talking while looking into the other person's eyes conveys the silent message: I'm focusing on your words, and my words are also true. This gives the other person a feeling of being respected and increases concentration on the conversation. However, excessive eye contact, lasting more than 3 seconds, can rather create a burden. So caution is needed. There's what's called exploratory eyes, a gaze that expresses favor and interest in the other person, which can act as an element that makes the other person feel you're more attractive, going beyond appropriate eye contact. Thus, your first impression is already saying many things. Even if you don't say anything, your appearance itself is one message. The more positive and powerful this message is, the more power the content you convey by opening your mouth will gain. Ultimately, your first impression is an important part that determines your communication ability, and this exerts great influence, not only on personal success, but throughout social life in general. The fourth reason why you should look at this when meeting someone is that bad first impressions are very difficult to recover from. This is related to the primacy effect I mentioned earlier. Once a negative impression is made, it rarely disappears, like a stain on clothes. Even after washing thoroughly, a faint mark often remains. Why is that? Because people tend to judge others based on initially formed impressions and try to interpret information according to those impressions. This is called confirmation bias. For example, if you received the first impression that someone is lazy, even if you see them working hard, you might negatively interpret it as they're just working hard today by chance, or they're doing that because someone's watching. This confirmation bias makes it very difficult to escape from the framework of a once formed first impression. No matter how sincerely You change and make efforts. The other person's gaze is already trapped in a negative frame and tends to see your actions in a distorted way. Conversely, for someone who gave a good first impression, even small mistakes are interpreted positively, like, "That's not like them. They must be tired," or, "Mistakes can happen." Thus, a bad first impression can hide your actual self and plant prejudice about you in the other person. To break this prejudice and plant a good impression again requires tremendous effort and time. It can truly be as difficult as swimming upstream. Sometimes you might feel frustrated by the other person's stereotypes that don't change, no matter how hard you try. It's like putting precious food in a broken bowl. It looks less valuable because of the flaws in the bowl itself. Moreover, a bad first impression can lower the credibility of the message you want to convey and cause your abilities to be underestimated. This situation can lead to fatal consequences, not only in personal relationships, but also in important social life, such as interviews and business meetings. Since a bad first impression is this dangerous, we realize once again how important it is to plant a good impression from the beginning. We may not be able to do everything perfectly from the start, but at least making an effort to give a favorable impression with basic courtesy and a neat appearance is essential. Being late, showing unconscious bad habits, leg shaking, nail biting, etc., or exaggerating yourself can seriously damage your first impression, so special caution is needed. These small mistakes can accumulate to form an irreversibly bad first impression. Thus, first impressions have an enormous impact on all our relationships and communication in life. So how can we create a favorable first impression? It's never difficult. First, a neat appearance and tidy attire is the most basic of basics. I'm not saying to wear expensive luxury clothes. Clothes that fit well, are clean and ironed, along with a neat hairstyle and clean skin, give the other person the impression that you're sincere and manage yourself well, especially attire considering TPO, time, place, occasion, appropriate to the meeting place and situation, can give the impression that you respect and consider the other person. For example, in formal settings, clothing that doesn't expose shoulders and knees is good, and in casual gatherings, comfortable yet sophisticated attire would be good. Color can also affect first impressions. Red represents vitality, yellow brightness and splendor, white cleanliness, and black intensity, so using them appropriately, according to the situation, is also a good strategy. Your attire is your first message. Second, don't forget a bright and positive expression, especially a smile. The most beautiful expression on a person's face is exactly a smile, especially the Duchenne smile, where wrinkles form slightly around the eyes, simultaneously conveys sincerity and friendliness. A smile sends the silent message to the other person, I welcome you, and consider our conversation pleasant. Practice a natural smile in front of a mirror. A smile will further enhance your charm. Third, a confident attitude and appropriate body language are important. A confident and upright posture displays confidence. Crossing your arms or closing your body can give a defensive or arrogant impression, so it's better to avoid them. An open posture, naturally lowering your arms, or using light hand gestures appropriate to the content, gives the other person a sense of comfort and trust. Also, it's important to maintain appropriate eye contact while listening attentively to the other person. This gives the other person the impression that I'm focusing on your story and helps gain favor. Fourth, a clear and distinct voice, gentle tone of speech will give trustworthiness. Mumbling or speaking too fast or too slow is not good. It's good to convey your thoughts and feelings clearly while speaking in a gentle tone. It's important to add variations to the volume and pitch of your voice to lead a lively conversation. When speaking, pronounce clearly, with confidence, and show an attitude that considers making it easy for the other person to understand. In addition to this, a pleasant scent can help leave a positive first impression. A subtle and natural fragrance can plant a clean and sophisticated impression on the other person. Also, an appropriate sense of humor can soften the atmosphere and make you appear more friendly and attractive. Preparing interesting episodes or stories is also a good method. Finally, don't lose sincerity. Trying to make a good first impression by forcing yourself or showing a pretentious appearance can rather backfire. People surprisingly quickly see through the other person's sincerity. An awkward smile, exaggerated gestures, and fabricated words can rather give discomfort. The best first impression comes from the comfort and honesty that emanates from your true self. It's okay not to be perfect. However, it's important to approach with a sincere attitude, containing a heart that respects and considers the other person. Remembering and calling the other person's name or sincerely complimenting them will make your sincerity stand out even more. When these efforts come together, you'll be able to leave a favorable first impression on people and create successful relationships. When you meet people, what should you look at? And how should you present yourself? Do you have a sense of it now? Ultimately, the most important thing when meeting people is winning the other person's heart. And the first step to winning that heart is making a good first impression. Please remember what we talked about today, and I hope you leave a good impression in all your future meetings. I'm rooting for all your meetings to lead to success. I'll come back next time with more beneficial stories. Thank you.